All right, so hi everyone. If you actually joined us live for the webinar, you will notice that we are wearing different clothes. Different people are in the room. We had a little snafu with the recording, and so we are redoing the webinar. So you'll notice that it's going to be a bit different from the original. Don't worry, we will cover the same content and everything will be good. So, all right, so the format of this webinar is that I'll begin by giving a brief presentation, giving an overview of the Early Independence Award. Then we will have a presentation by our scientific review officers, and we will get to that later. And then we will dive into the questions that we have received ahead of time, as well as recalling some of the questions that we received during the original webinar. All right, so we will go ahead and begin again. All right, so first we'll introduce our panelists.
I'm Ravi Basavappa, the program leader for the High Risk High Reward Research Program.
I'm Becky Miller. I'm the program officer for the Early Independence Award, and I also help out with other aspects of the High Risk High Reward Research Program.
Hello, I'm Eli Murcia, and I am the operations person for this for the HRHR. I help with the pay list, meaning the money that is going to you guys, the ones who are pass the test, and then I also am the one who sends the opportunities and presents them for publication.
And I'm Lyle Tomlinson. I'm the communications team member for the High Risk High Reward programs, and I highlight the amazing research that's being done by our investigators, as well as a number of other tasks.
Right, and then we will get Dr. Suzanne Ryan. She's from the Center for Scientific Review and is one of the scientific review officers for the Early Independence Award, as well as Tasmeen Week, also from the Center for Scientific Review, and we will get them in here. The magic of editing. Okay. All right, so to begin with, I'll just give a brief overview of the High Risk High Reward Research Program. So it really began in 2002 when Dr. Zerhouni surveyed the biomedical research community and asked them for their input about NIH processes, particularly the review process. And the results came back, and the survey indicated that many people felt that the NIH review process was very conservative, and that sometimes opportunities were lost for high-risk ideas, that opportunities to really make large leaps and bounds in science. And so Dr. Zerhouni created a working group to this issue, and in 2004, the Pioneer Award was created. The first award that for the High Risk High Reward Research Program, it's centered on single PIs, so it's a person-based award, so we're looking for highly qualified, creative scientists who have a track record of creativity and overcoming difficult research, and this is really meant to help support innovative ideas that would not fare well in traditional R01 review. The award is for $700,000 per year for 5 years. And once again, it's a single PI only, and it's open to all career stages, but because you have to demonstrate a track record of creativity and outstanding science, oftentimes we tend to get more established investigators applying to this award. And then in 2007 came the NIH Director's New Innovator Award. It's really a flavor of the Pioneer Award, except it's only for early stage investigators. So early stage investigators are defined as those who have received their terminal research degree, such as their PhD, or completed their clinical training within the past 10 years. And they cannot have received an NIH R01 or equivalent award. So these are earlier career investigators. This one is $1.5 million for the 5-year project period. And what's unique about this award is that it's multi-year funded, and that just means that we give you that full $1.5 million in the first year of the award, and you control your spending that. So it gives you the flexibility to use the funds how you really need it. So if you're just starting your lab and you need to do a lot of hires, you have money for it, or you're purchasing large amounts of equipment, you can also do that. Then came the Transformative Research Award in 2009. This one's different from the other two in that this is the only one that we actually allow either single PIs or multi-PIs applications to this. So teams or individuals are welcome to submit research that is really creative and innovative and really thinking outside the box. We're looking for ideas that are conventional and with the high impact potential, maybe a really shifting paradigms, can really revolutionize science. This one we have a flexible budget. The budget is depending on the needs of your project, and we allow it up to the total amount that's allocated for the initiative, which is usually around $6 to $8 million. But of course, you must have a compelling justification for any of the funds that you are asking for. And then the one that we will be discussing in great depth today is the Early Independence Award. First awards were made in 2011. And once again, this one was really meant to, I think more of the risk is actually the investigators. This is known as the Skip the Stock Award. Really looking for those very junior scientists who have the skills already and the maturity and that to bypass traditional postdoctoral training or additional training and jumpstart their own independent research program right away. So this is the mechanism for that, and that's the one we'll be discussing today. But overall, the whole program here, we offer annual funding opportunities. These typically come out in the spring, and receipt dates are typically either very late summer or early fall. And it's cyclical, so you can anticipate every spring, issue the funding opportunities, receipt dates typically in the fall. Commonality is that all of these awards are really meant for your high risk, broad impact, high impact ideas. We really are looking for those ideas that would not fare well in traditional R01 reviews, and that will really help move the needle on science and make these big leaps and bounds. Important point is that no preliminary data are required for any of these initiatives, and we are serious when we say that you do not have to include preliminary data. That's because we realize these are high risk ideas, so you may not have the preliminary data to demonstrate total feasibility. However, most applicants include a bit of preliminary data just to kind of show that direction that things are possible to these, but it's not required. And importantly, we also welcome any topic relevant to the NIH mission. Since we're in the Office of the Director, we are open to any type of topic as long as it's relevant to the biomedical and behavioral research. We also are very open to, always looking to diversify our applicant pool in scientific topics as well as demographics and institutions. So we do welcome applications from a wide array of individuals and institutions in different topics. And I'd like to acknowledge all these wonderful people here. This is the High Risk, High Reward Research Programs Working Group. Representatives from almost every NIH institute and center. This is a very large program it's very complex, and all these people help make it possible. All right, so diving into the Early Independence Award. Once again, this initiative was created to really help these outstanding early career scientists move rapidly into their own independent research positions by skipping the traditional postdoc. So to define early career scientists, we have a very narrow eligibility window. Currently, it's June 1st. You have to have completed your terminal research degree or your clinical training from June 1st of 2018, or you will complete it by September 30th of 2020. So that's the window. You must also be in a non-independent position at the time of your application. Define non-independence functionally. That means that your research is set through concurrence with mentors. Your research is primarily funded through others. This does not mean, though, if you have a training award or grant, that's fine. That doesn't make you ineligible, but you can't have like a major NIH grant or something already. You also can't have research space assigned to you by your institution, and you can't have, you must receive special permission from your institution to apply for NIH R01. You have to have a special waiver or exemption form. So that's how we define non-independence. You have to meet all 4 of those criteria in order to be eligible to apply. This award also requires support and commitment from a host institution. That means that you have an institution that's willing to give you an independent research position, and that they need to provide the facilities and all the resources necessary for you to conduct your research and build your own independent research program. So there is a very large portion of the application that needs to be filled out by the host institution. There are specific questions in there that should be answered by your institution. Please make sure they actually complete all that and answer all the questions there. It's very important for reviewers to get a whole idea of the support and the mentoring structure that you will receive at this institution. You're also required to commit 9.6 person months each year to the Early Independence Award project. You have to do that for the first 2 years of the award. After the first 2 years, so for your project period years 3, 4, and 5, you can decrease the amount of effort that you put on the Independence Award project, but you must commit at least 9.6 person months towards independent research in general. So it doesn't have to be on our project, but you still have to be doing a significant amount of research. And that's really to protect you so that as you're establishing your own program, that you're not being inundated with teaching duties, clinical duties, or other administrative duties. Once again, you do not have to have preliminary data to apply. And the awards for this are $250,000 per year for a 5-year project period. The application itself, it's a bit different from, the content's a bit different from your traditional R01 package. And I would like to state first off that there is a limit to the number of applications that an institution can submit. So only 2 applications per institution, and that's meant so that don't get so many early independence awardees that they cannot actually actually support all those awardees. So 2 applications per institution. For your research strategy essay, you have 12 pages, and you're going to address some of the typical things that you do in R1s. You want to talk about the challenge and significance, but we really want to focus a lot on your qualifications as an investigator. We realize that you're very junior, so we want to make sure that you do have the skills and you're at that stage where you really can bypass additional training, that you're ready to go into your own program. So we'll look heavily at your qualifications as well as your plans for development, your mentoring structure at the institution, for instance. And then we do also look heavily at your the challenge and significance and the innovativeness of your approach. As I mentioned earlier, the facilities and other, the institution has a large component of the application that they need to fill out, and that's in the facility and other resources section. Once again, there are a lot of specific questions that are asked in that section. And yes, your institution does need to answer all of those. Make sure that they include everything that is asked for in the application. For the budget, because it's a $250,000 per year indirect cost, and you need to submit a modular budget, so not many details are required in there, and we don't require budget justifications beyond personnel, which is still brief. Letters of collaboration should be included in your application. Once again, because you are a junior investigator, we want to make sure that your project has all the expertise and the support it needs to actually be successful. So please include letters of collaboration in your application. Once again, research effort, you need that 9.6 person months for the first 2 years of the award. That comes out to be about 80% of your effort. We also ask for 3 to 5 letters of reference, and these are required, once again, because we are looking at you as an investigator. We want to make sure that you have the qualifications and skills necessary to launch your own program. All right, and now we will turn it over to our scientific review officers, who will talk a bit about the review process.
Thank you. I'm Suzanne Ryan. I'm Scientific Review Officer at NIH's Center for Scientific Review, and along with my colleague Tasmin Week, we're organizing the review process for these DP5 applications. I'll talk about the review stages. There are 2 stages in this process, and this slide shows kind of a broad overview of all the steps in the process. The first is that you submit your applications in September. The application date is September 13th, and then the stage 1 review process begins after that and will span from October to December. And in that stage 1 review, application will be reviewed by subject matter experts. And so those are people recruited specifically for the needs of the science in your application. After that, stage 2 begins with editorial consideration. They will work on your applications in January and February, and I'll explain more about what that editorial board consists of and what they'll do in a few more slides. The editorial board, after they're reviewing your applications through the winter, they will meet in person in March to discuss the applications and provide final scores. And in May, the NIH Council of Councils will meet to make recommendations about funding. So the general review considerations, during the review process, the reviewers are asked to consider the fact, first of all, that PIs are at a very early stage in the research career, and they are expected to devote almost exclusive effort to the project, as Becky talked about earlier. And they're also asked to consider the fact that these awards are meant to allow you to start productive and independent research career at an earlier stage and to have a significant impact on the field, and to allow that transition to an independent research career earlier. So they are focusing on 5 key areas. The first is the promise of the investigator, and they will evaluate the promise of the investigator through the information provided in the BioSketch, as well as the letters of reference. These are a very critical source for the reviewers learning more about you from your perspective in the BioSketch, and also from the perspective of people who know you best through the letters of reference. Also going to focus a lot on the institutional support and commitment that has been promised by the host institution that you are targeting. And the details about that institutional support will come from the facilities and other resources section of the application, as well as the letters of support. So it's very important that your institutional officials are as specific as possible in detailing the type of support that they plan to provide you in terms of what the position would be, how they will help integrate you with the faculty, what types of physical resources provide you, as well as general mentoring type resources from faculty that will surround you. Also, they will be focused, of course, on the significance and innovation of the science. It's really important that you convey clearly what the significance is so that a broad panel of experts can understand, not just those who are in your own field of science. Best that you can convey to a wider audience and not just a field-specific audience why your work is important, the better off you will be. And then lastly, the scientific approach is also going to be evaluated by the reviewers. They will score applications. Moving on to the next slide, they're going to, all the reviewers will assign an overall impact score to your application using the standard 1 to 9 scale that NIH uses for review processes, where 1 is the best score and 9 is the worst score. And that overall impact, the definition is the likelihood that your project will have a sustained and powerful influence on the field. So every reviewer will give you a score for overall impact with the subject matter experts and the editorial board. And in addition, the subject matter experts in stage 1 provide a score for each of the 5 individual review criteria: the significance, investigator, innovation approach, and environment. So talking more about the stage 1 process, first of all, I want to mention that all the applications will be reviewed together in one special emphasis panel. So the DP5 application is reviewed together. You're not going to be assigned to standing study sections that are to your area of science. And then when we receive the applications, all of the integrated review groups here at CSR will help with recruiting these reviewers. So in the stage 1, that means SROs throughout CSR, just myself and Tasmin, will be helping to recruit these subject matter experts. So it's SROs who are most familiar with your area of science. We'll identify people who have the right expertise to evaluate your science across all the biomedical and biobehavioral science areas. And your application will be assigned to 3 male reviewers. We call them male reviewers because they are providing only a written critique. They do not participate in any in-person discussions that happen later. So you'll have 3 subject matter experts provide a mail-in critique, and their main job is to focus primarily on the merits of the science. So they're primarily looking at the significance, innovation, and approach, but also, of course, the investigator and environment. Stage 2 is where the editorial board review comes in, and this is a board that will meet in person to discuss your applications, and it's composed of a group of senior scientists, probably about 18 to 20, depending on the number of applications we receive, senior scientists with broad expertise across all the areas of science that are relevant to the NIH mission. And so there may not be an editorial board member with expertise in your particular area of science, but they are very senior folks who can evaluate science broadly across fields. And they will review the applications as well as review what the stage 1 subject matter experts wrote to help them kind of orient themselves more clearly to the significance of your project and any approach issues that were identified. After they do their evaluation of your applications, each editor reviews about 10 to 15 applications, then submit their scores in February, and will rank order the applications based on the average score across all of your reviewers. They will be rank ordered and identify the top 50% of applications that will then be discussed in March at an in-person meeting of these editorial board members. And at this in-person meeting, the assigned board members will present the strengths and weaknesses of the application to the rest of the panel. All of the board members will discuss it, and everyone will vote on a score for your application. Those scores are then averaged, and they represent the final score for your application. And in this editorial board review, per the requirements of the FOA, their emphasis is largely on evaluating the investigator and the environment, the institutional support factor. They, of course, consider the significance of science and the innovation and approach, but there is an emphasis tilted towards the qualities of the investigator and the environment within the board considerations. So moving on to the next page about board considerations, what they're instructed to carefully is whether the PI is an exceptional individual and whether you have the scientific creativity and intellectual sophistication to launch and accelerate your independent research career at this stage. They're also going to look closely at how the host institution is committed to providing you with scientific freedom, the resources necessary, faculty who can collaborate with you on your project, and importantly, protected time, because you are expected to devote 9.6 months of your time to this project. I do want to have specifics about this institutional commitment. It's really important. So they need to feel convinced of the support needed. So your institutional officers need to make sure they are clear about how they're going to provide you with all the needed support. And then lastly, they're trying to distinguish who are the top applicants across the fields that they have presented before them. Then two-stage review process completes. Going on to next, all the applications were discussed. The in-person meeting will receive scores within 3 to 5 business days after that March editorial board meeting. And Commons will show whether or not your application was discussed or scored. You will have a message in a Commons, and it will indicate if your application was discussed, it will give you your score. If it was not discussed, it will say that. Applications will receive written summary statements, and that will happen within 30 days after the meeting. So the discussed applications will get a summary statement that has the 3 critiques from the stage 1 reviewers, as well as a paragraph that we call the resume and summary of discussion, that specifically summarizes what happened at the meeting, what points were discussed at that meeting. And then if your application is not discussed, you get that summary of discussion, because there was not a discussion, but you will get 3 written critiques from the stage 1 reviewers. And just a few tips for applicants in general. As I mentioned, it's important that you be very specific about the institutional support that will be provided. Also, letters of reference should not sound generic. Advise your letter writers to comment specifically what makes you unique and what makes you ready at this point in your career to launch an independent research. It's very important that you are clear about how your project will advance science. We're looking, the overall impact statement, or overall impact definition is how your project will have a sustained, powerful influence in the field. So you need to be clear about how it will move science forward, and also to make sure that you articulate this significance in a way that scientists across the editorial board who are not necessarily experts in your field can understand and relate to. Also, advise to set reasonable, specific aims that can be accomplished within the parameters of this project, within the timeline and the resources you have. Don't promise an unrealistic amount of work, because this hurts your score, because the reviewers then worry about feasibility, being able to actually accomplish what you have set out to do. In terms of questions you have, Becky Miller is the point of contact. Any questions you have between now and when you submit, she can answer questions that help you prepare your application. And then she is also your point of contact after the review process concludes. So any questions you may have about the summary statement, go to Becky. And then once you submit, between then and the March review meeting, Tasmin and I can be your points of contact for any questions related to the review process. So we do roles separate, so this will help you know whom to target your specific questions. Lastly, there are some resources, and you've got the website here, the link to the FY, and then the contact information for myself and my colleague Tasmin as well.
All right, I'd like to thank Tasmin and Suzanne for providing information about the review process. Now we're going to move on to the second portion of the webinar, which is answering questions that we received earlier. We'll be by topics, so we will address the questions received for each topic and then move on. And please, if you recall questions or additional questions, please chime in and we will answer them here. If you have questions that are not answered in this webinar, please feel free to reach out to us at our Early Independence Award mailbox, and we will answer those offline. So our first topic is on institutions. So Ravi,
Okay.
I haven't found a host institution yet. Can I submit my application and continue to search for one while the application is under review?
No, the application is actually submitted by the institution, not by the individual. You need to have, at the time of application, a host institution lined up definitely. And it's also important in terms of review because, as Becky just stated, the support that will be provided by the host institution is also critical information that the reviewers consider. So you really need to have all that set up in advance of submitting the application, and only the institution can submit the application on your behalf. I also like to point out that your independent research position can be contingent upon receipt of the award. So you don't have to have anything definite at the time of application, but given by the institution can be contingent upon award.
All right, and another flavor of that, do I submit my application from my current institution where I'm getting my degree, or do I submit it from the institution where I will actually be doing the research?
The application must be submitted by the host institution where you actually plan to carry out the early independent supported research, again, because it's critical information about what the host institution will be providing to you as an early independence awardee.
How can I find an institution that's willing to support me?
We do not provide any matchmaking services in which we try to match prospective applicants to willing host institutions. Rather, it's the onus is on you, the prospective applicant. You may start reaching out to institutions that you think for the kind of research that you want to propose, or start working through your networks of contacts to figure out which institutions might be willing to host you. But it's really up to you to make the connection.
And then just remember that there's a limit, that there's only 2 applications.
Yes, thank you. And remember that there is a limit of up to 2 applications per institution. This means that the institutions probably will have some internal vetting process with 2 applications they would like to submit. Sometimes the institutions will post that information on their websites, but in which they actually solicit applications from prospective candidates. So you may want to use your favorite search engine to look for institutions that have posted such information on their website, and typically they will also include a time frame for submitting such applications from individuals as well as contact information.
Right. And what type of position does the institution need to provide to me?
The major requirement is that whatever position you do have, you to pursue independent research. So you have to be totally scientifically independent at the period of your early independence award. Whatever title you have can vary from institution to institution, and also the kind of position you may be. It doesn't have to be tenure track assistant. It could be an independent fellow position, and many institutions have their own independent fellows positions that confer total scientific independence to the awardee, and that's totally fine for the purpose of this program. You need to be able to, in addition to being totally scientifically independent, you also need to be able to control the budget for the award. That you're the one who says how the money will be spent within NIH spending policies, of course.
Are all types of positions viewed equally during the review, or is one type of position preferred over the others?
I really don't have any preference for what type of position. The only requirements are that this is a totally independent research position. You're the one who's setting forth scientific vision, and you have access to the facilities that you do need to pursue the research, and control over your budget.
And what resources does the institution need to provide?
Typically, again, it depends on the type of research that's being pursued. If you're doing wet lab research, then the institution should be willing to give you independent research space, not just in somebody else's laboratory, but your own assigned research space that you can call your lab. The the institution should provide adequate support staff in terms of people who can report what your budget is at any given time, access to necessary resources such as core facilities if they are appropriate for the research that you're proposing, access to adequate computational facilities if you're proposing to do some things that require computationally intensive resources.
And what about salary support? Do constraints on the salary?
No, not really. You can salary support from the Early Independence Award. Often the institution will also supplement that with salary support itself. You can't, of course, demand a salary that exceeds the NIH policy limit.
And what would a successful institutional support package look like?
So reviewers look at the resources available, including, again, access to core facilities, access to other sort of infrastructure that would be necessary for you to conduct your research. But in addition, the reviewers, in terms of institutional support, in addition to any sort of funding that the institution would provide or resources, physical resources, the reviewers also take into serious consideration the type of intellectual environment that would be provided by the institution, how well integrated you would be into the local research enterprise, what sort of mentoring structure would be to you. So although you're expected to be totally scientifically independent, tightrope by yourself, we expect that the local environment, that the institution will also a safety net of sorts, that there will be people watching out for you to make sure that if you do happen to, that they'll help you to get back on track.
Right. And what is the experience of successful applicants in selecting an institution? Recommendations in terms of when to begin reaching out to institutions and what information to provide them?
Yeah, so if you're planning to finish up pretty soon, then definitely you should start reaching out to institutions. But probably, if you know that you want to apply for the Early Independence Award, then probably at least a year before you plan to graduate or apply for the Early Independence Award would be a good time to start reaching out.
And how are institutions identified for the 2 application limit?
By a unique institution has that entity that has a unique number, Dun and Bradstreet numbered. So what that means in terms of local organization can vary from local organization to organization. For example, one university may have associated medical school. That medical school may have its own DUNS number, so that medical school would be able to submit 2 applications. However, other organizations or university may have an affiliated medical school, but that medical school shares the same DUNS number as the parent university. It's only the parent university that would be able to submit 2 applications. And whatever application submitted by the medical school would count for the 2 limit.
Right. And can I transfer the award to a different institution if I move?
Yes, it's quite common for people to change institutions during the course of the award. You should note the award is actually made to the institution. The institution is the formal grantee, not the individual. So it's up to the institution to relinquish the award so that it can be transferred to the host institution. That has never been a problem so far. Yeah, people, especially people who are starting their own research program, it's quite common for them to change institutions.
Any additional questions that we had related to institution were covered through the answers of the questions already covered. Great.
Right. All right, moving on to eligibility.
So Becky, is the June 1st, 2018 to September 20th, 2020 eligibility window firm? I graduated May 31st, just one day before the window Can't you cut me some slack?
And no, we can't make any exceptions. The eligibility window is firm, and sorry, but we cannot make any exceptions.
Okay. What is a non-independent research position?
Yeah, so once again, we define that functionally. So there are 4 criteria, and you must meet all 4 criteria to be eligible. Your current research agenda is set through concurrence with mentors. 2, your research is funded primarily through support to other investigators. However, if you have mentor fellowships or training grants, does not preclude you from eligibility. You cannot have space assigned to you by your institution for your research, directly assigned to you anyway. And 4, you cannot apply for an NIH R01 without a special waiver or exemption from your institution.
Great. Why is the non-independent research position described functionally rather than by title? Seems kind of awkward.
Yeah, there are many different titles for positions that have a lot of the same functionality. So rather than going by all the various titles and their forms, we just decided to define things functionally to make it clear and have clear boundaries.
Can postdocs apply for the award?
Yes, postdocs can apply if they have not served as a postdoc for more than 12 months after a previous research degree, terminal research degree, so or PhD. So say you got a PhD, served as a postdoc for 13 months, went back to school, got another PhD, and then decided to apply for this program, you would be ineligible because you served as a postdoc after that first PhD for over 12 months. You would then be ineligible.
How much time should be dedicated to the award project?
Expect a large percentage of effort on this award. You need to dedicate 9.6 person months to the Early Independence Award project in the first 2 years of it. After that, for years 3, 4, and 5, you can increase the effort that you put on the Early Independence Award project, but you must still dedicate at least 9.6 person months towards independent research in general.
Does the Early Independence Award remove my early stage investigator status?
Yes, the Early Independence Award is considered an R01 equivalent. It's considered significant funding, and it will strip you of your early stage investigator status. So please keep that in mind. If you do receive this award, no more ESI status.
So my area of science hasn't been funded in the program. Should I still apply?
Yes, so we are always trying to, we always encourage applications from any topic relevant to the NIH mission, and we especially encourage applications from underrepresented science. So if you're looking at our website through our funded research and you notice that, you know, your area of science is not represented there, please keep in mind that we are always striving to diversify our portfolio of the research that we have supported. So don't let it discourage you, and actually look at it as opportunity. We're always looking to diversify our portfolio, and we welcome any type of science that's relevant to the NIH mission.
So one of the questions that was asked previously, are there any residency requirements?
There are no U.S. citizenship requirements to apply. You must apply from a U.S.-based domestic institution. So we don't have any requirements, and we also get questions about, like, if you're trying, you cannot transfer the award to a foreign institution as well.
If the applicant institution is a small business with plans to partner with a research university for support and mentorship, how is eligibility impacted?
You would technically be eligible to apply from a business as long as you are still given research independence, the other eligibility requirements. But it can be difficult coming from a business side where you're your research usually is constrained or dictated by advisors or the higher ups. So it can be difficult because you need to be in an independent research position to be eligible for this.
Can you hold a K award and Early Independence Award at the same time?
Typically, no. So a lot of the stipulations surrounding the K award makes it so that you cannot hold on to the K and have the Early Independence Award. The Early Independence Award is a research grant. It's fully independent, and you need to be in an independent position, which often then conflicts with the requirements of the K award. That being said, though, you should look at the specifics, your notice of award with your K award, and see if there are conflicts.
And that's it for that section.
Can you think of any others? All right, moving on to application and submission. All right, Ravi, what should I include in the research strategy section?
We get pretty good guidance in the FOA about what should be included, although we use the R1 application packet. Don't write what is normally in the research strategy component for an R1, if you know what that is. But instead, we ask you, as the applicant, to address items of programmatic interest, items that will be reviewed by the reviewers. So we ask you in this section not just to describe science for what you're going to do and why it's important. Also, we ask you to address, for example, want to skip the postdoc, or why you want to launch your career early, why you think that's a good idea for you, and what you would do if you don't get the award.
And do you have any recommendations about how much space you should allocate for each of the sections?
Technically, we can't provide such defined guidance. You have within the 12-page envelope to use those 12 pages as best you think to address the various items of programmatic interest.
And should PI BioSketch address research support or scholastic achievement?
Yes and yes. So we are interested in, those are essential components of the kinds of information that should be provided in the BioSketch. What are the sources of research support that you've received as a graduate student, for example, or what sort of accolades and awards that you've received, a sense of your level of accomplishment.
And is there a page limit to the facilities and other resources section?
No, there is no limit. So you should, the institutional officials should, this part of the research of the application, they should use whatever is necessary to provide the information at a satisfactory level of detail.
All right. Can predoctoral or prior mentors be collaborators on the project proposal, or is this seen as a sign that the applicant's unprepared for this type of award and needs further training?
Having concern here might be that the reviewers could think that if you're still using your mentor as a collaborator, that you somehow are still in the orbit of that mentor. You need to be able to convince the reviewers that you are totally scientifically independent.
For tenure track appointments, can we focus our career development plan on achieving tenure? Like, is it okay to include some aspects of teaching and service if they're needed to get tenure?
You could include those sort of items in your career development because those are the expectations of the local institution, and that's what will be necessary for you to develop your career at the institution. But you should keep in mind the overall constraint of 80% research effort, independent research.
Okay. Can you further explain what is meant by collaborative elements in Section 7 of the research approach in the research strategy?
Collaborative elements it refers to types of collaborations or services who's going to be helping with the Independence Award project. You need to be able to include who will be helping you or how you will be getting the expertise and or some of the project done. Research strategy section.
The specific aims page is unique for this mechanism. Is the recommendation to focus on science with other specific aims, or is this truly a blend of research objectives, support from institution, and rationale for early independence?
It truly is the latter. It's a blend. We don't ask you to articulate 2, 3, or 4 specific aims as in a standard R01, but to give an overall one-page distillation of your entire application packet. What it is you want to do, why you want to do it, why you want to skip the postdoc, and why you think you're ready to launch an early career.
That's it for that section.
All right, we'll move on to budget.
Dr. Miller, can award money be used for salary support for co-investigators? If so, should their bias sketches be included?
All right, so you can use award money to support the salaries of co-investigators and other personnel, like so collaborators, consultants, lab personnel. Our budget also though needs to include research expenses, supplies, equipment. However, your bio sketch is allowed in the application, so none of the key personnel should be included, only the PIs.
What is the salary cap or salary guidance for early independence positions?
Yeah, so we don't have any requirements on salary, besides that you cannot breach the NIH overall salary cap, but that's between you and your institution.
If my host institution is providing startup funds, how should I address this in my budget justification?
We don't ask for specifics in the budget because it's $250,000 for a year. That means we use the modular budget, which does not ask for specifics.
How should I allocate startup funds versus DP5 funds? For example, if I have large cost equipment items, should I put those on the DP5 or startup? My salary.
Yeah, well, because we do not require budgetary details, you should expend your funds in what's most appropriate for you and your situation and your project. So once again, you should be speaking with your institution and working with them on making some of these decisions.
Okay. Can graduate students or postdocs be included in the budget?
Yes, you can include personnel costs in the budget.
Do you have any tips in developing the modular budget?
Any tips? It's pretty basic. You just say, I want $250,000
Justify personnel.
in personnel, but even that's pretty brief. Yeah,
Not much.
there's not much detail there. So
That's it for that section.
okay, moving on. Reference. All right, Robbie, who should I ask for a letter of reference from?
The letter writers should be able to speak to your level of accomplishment, even as a person who's finishing graduate school or completing their clinical training. The letter writers should be able to indicate how scientifically independent you may have already been, also give some idea of how creative and innovative you have been, how bold you've been in challenging paradigms or trying to establish new paradigms, and also how you acquired leadership qualities during your training period, whether you have the ability to not only lead a lab, but to inspire a lab. And they may also speak to the science that you proposed, how impactful and how innovative it might be. So these are people who should know you pretty well. But probably you should not get letters from people who are invested in the outcome. For example, collaborators that you identify should not write letters of reference. People at your institution, for example, deans or chairs, also may not be the best writers of these letters because they are invested in the outcome.
Right. What's the difference between a letter of reference and a letter of support?
A letter of reference is somebody who speaks to about you as an individual, your accomplishments so far, and your potential to be to contribute to science in the future. Letters of support are letters of support typically come from collaborators who detail what sort of support they would give to you in terms of collaboration, what sort of how or what sort of experiments they would perform.
Okay. So if a host department does not train graduate students, yet we propose to have graduate students assist with the research, do we need to provide letters of support verifying or strongly implying adjunct appointments?
Yeah, I don't think there's any requirement that you would have to have graduate assistants perform your research. Depends on the institution. Some institutions don't have graduate students. That's quite okay. You just need to be able to conduct the research that you're proposing using whatever sort of personnel that you have available to you.
For letters of reference.
All right, letters of support. I think most of this is answered.
Is there a limit to the number of letters of support? How many are typically provided?
There's no limit for this. You should just include as many letters as needed to let reviewers know that you have support of the institution and collaborators and the service providers necessary to complete your proposed research.
So who should write letters of support?
All right. Yeah, this one had very specific individuals. So they asked institution officials. Yes, institution officials can write a letter of support stating their commitment to the candidate. There's really no need for mentors that are going to be involved in your career development plan for them to submit a letter. Typically, we're more interested in the research aspect for letters of support. Collaborator that you have on the project should absolutely submit a letter of support, as well as any companies or service providers who are going to provide services or equipment. You can also have your department chair, host institutions, submit a letter of support just to verify that there is the institutional commitment there. Personnel that are detailed in the budget justification. If you have your key personnel identified, then yes, they can submit a letter if they want to, but oftentimes people have those key personnel identified at this time.
Typically, people who are technicians or students in the lab don't submit letters of support. For PhD students who haven't graduated by the submission deadline in September, a letter of support from the department chair stating that they will graduate before the award period be helpful?
Yes, it could be helpful for reviewers to know that you're on track to graduate on time.
No questions from that section.
Okay, and then the next one is review.
Some people have asked, how are reviewers selected?
Okay, so the subject matter experts, they're selected specifically with the needs of your application in mind. And they are 3 scholars who have strong grounding in the science needed for your project alone. And they're not necessarily going to review anybody else's application but yours. For the editorial board level, these senior level scientists with broad scientific knowledge, and they represent a mix of fields that cover the diverse areas of science relevant to the NIH mission. So area of science you can think of, we may recruit an editorial board member to cover immunology, for example, and nutrition, or cell biology, and then behavioral social science. There'll be a mix of expertise areas. And also they'll be diverse in terms of the types of institutions they represent, as well as regions of the country and other types of diversity that we look for.
Okay. Next question. What will reviewers focus on the most?
Reviewers are instructed to closely follow what's provided in the FOA. So the FOA details the review criteria and specifies reviewers should provide more emphasis on the investigator environment criteria. And stage 1 spend more time focused on the significance approach of the science, and stage FY2020 does provide more heavy emphasis on the investigator and environment.
What types of criteria are used to assess the applicant? That is, publications, journal impact factors, history of being successfully funded through other awards and training grants. What kind of criteria are they looking for?
Most importantly, assessing your readiness for independence, and that you have demonstrated an ability to successfully complete independent research. So publications are part of it. There's not a magic number of publications that they are counting up. They don't typically talk about journal impact factors. They do want to see that you have published and that you have published in high quality journals. Prior funding is not expected. In the FOA, you can see specifically what types of considerations sit under the investigator. So they're looking for whether the rationale for early independence is convincing. Do you have the appropriate experience, training, and skills? Have you demonstrated leadership, mentorship, management abilities? Those sorts of factors will be considered.
Okay. And what are reviewers looking for as a response to what will your planned career path be if an early independence award is not provided?
So the FOA allows for the institutional support to be dependent on the DP5 award. So it is allowable for the institution to say, we will provide the PI with this position if and only if the DP5 is awarded. We do tell the reviewers that. However, the stronger the commitment from the institution, the more convinced reviewers tend to be that you will be supported. So it's not seen as enough to say that the institution is committing to provide you with this particular position. Some people have asked if it removes incentive to provide the DP5, if it's shown that the institute is committed to giving you a job anyway. That is definitely not the case.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And there's one more question. I'm not sure if it's on your sheet because I think this might have come as we were talking before. Among the top 50% of applications to be discussed, how many of them are expected to receive the award?
So it will depend specifically on how many applications received, but in past years, it's traditionally been between about 9 and 11 applications that wind up being funded in the end.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on our remake of the Q&A webinar.